Um, we will go ahead and get started. I'm sure there'll be some more people joining us in just a bit, but don't want to keep the people that are here waiting. So today we're going to be talking about 10 essential ways to prep for college as a junior. So as everybody knows, the college application process is quite a daunting process. So we're trying to do everything we can to help our students prepare early. And so we'll provide some tips on everything that you should be doing now to make the process as smooth as possible and to help you be as successful as possible. So just some housekeeping to start. We will launch a poll. It would be helpful if you all could take a quick moment to answer it. Will help me better tailor the presentation content as we go. So wondering if your parents or students on here. So we have a good mix of mostly parents, some students too. All right, just a moment while these answers trickle in. Cool. Thanks so much for your participation there. I will go ahead and end the poll. Lots of parents here. Welcome, parents. Hopefully of 11th graders. Get this closed. Okay. So over the course of this webinar, feel free to use the chat for any comments or questions. Raising your hand, I won't see you, so don't use that. If you have questions that you want me to answer at the end of the presentations, you can use the Q&A. And then if you want, you can enable closed captioning. You have to have the latest update of Zoom, but this will help you translate the presentation into different languages. All right, so a little bit about me. My name's Josefa. I'm the co-founder and COO at Ingenious. I'm originally from Los Angeles. I graduated from Yale, where I studied political science, and I was also the captain of the women's basketball team. I've been working with students on their college application process for the last 10 years. So overseeing all of our work across the company, across our different regions around the world. It's very exciting and rewarding to be able to help our students, achieve their goals. First, define their goals and then work really hard to achieve their goals. Every year we get to work with more and more talented students. So super rewarding, and I'm hoping my experience working with hundreds of students over the last 10 years, I'm hopeful I can share some of my insights here with you today. So that's a little bit about me. Our agenda for today, we'll talk about who we are at Ingenious, what we do. We will talk about how applications are processed. We will move on to the college application timeline and then discuss 10 ways that you can prep for the college application process during your second semester of junior year. So at Ingenious, we have a team of over 150 former admissions officers from all of the top schools. So these are people who actually worked in the admissions office at schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, UC Berkeley, UCLA, Tufts, BC, all of the top schools, people who know from firsthand experience what these schools are looking for, and equally as important, what they're not looking for. So they were on the other side of the table, kind of evaluating applications and making admissions decisions. And now they're working with us, helping our students stand out in the process from an early age. We also have what we call graduate coaches. So graduate coaches are people with similar backgrounds to mine. So people who graduated from top undergrad or graduate programs, people who are trained and managed in our educational curriculum, who are expert writers to help students with the essay part of the application process. So all of our graduate coaches are super impressive, very creative, awesome writers, trained in our admissions curriculum, and very well suited to be working with students hand in hand throughout the course of high school. We also have over 75 professors, researchers, and scholars who teach in various courses at college campuses. So these are people who actually provide research opportunities to our students. So if you wanted to study, anthropology, maybe you do an academic mentorship with Professor Wright here. If you wanted to study art history, maybe you do an academic mentorship with Professor Minervini, who teaches art history at Stanford. So through our network, we are able to provide our students with unique research opportunities to help them develop as future scholars. So we've taken all of this information from our former admissions officers and we've built it into our curriculum. So we have, school specific insights at every single school. So our counselors have access to all of this information. And we use this information to actually train our counselors and make sure that we're providing a very comprehensive and, awesome service to our students. So very cool work that we've done, sort of collecting the ins and outs of all of the different schools and compiling it into a database that all of our counselors have access to. So results so far have been super exciting. So as you may or may not know, the early decision, early action results usually come out in the middle of December. So we found out from lots of schools in December whether or not our students got in. We were really proud of our results so far. So we had 33 Ivy League offers just in the early round, 38 top 10 offers just in the early round. I think one of the really cool highlights was the fact that we got 9 students into MIT just in the early round alone. So really impressive results, just coming from a lot of hard work from our students and hopefully expert advice from our counseling team as well. Okay, so tell us in the chat, what are you most nervous about for senior year? So this could be you as the student. This could also be you as the parent, what you're most nervous about, what you're most unsure about as you're sort of guiding your student through this hectic process. Feel free to drop a message in the chat to let us know. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about how applications are processed. So it's really important to understand what actually happens in the admissions office on the other side of the table so that you can work backwards to be successful as you are getting ready to apply. So what do admissions officers look for? So first, admissions officers use what we call a holistic review. So they are looking at you as the person. They are not just looking at your test score or your GPA or your resume. They are looking at everything about you. They are evaluating what type of friend you're going to be, what type of roommate you're going to be, what kind of student you're going to be, what type of member of an extracurricular organization on campus you're going to be. They're looking at you as the complete person, you as the complete human. So these are some of the kind of stats or pieces of information that are taken from the various schools. So all of the top schools are obviously looking for super competitive applicants, candidates, but they are also looking for more specific personality traits or qualities amongst the different schools. So Stanford, for example, focuses on academic excellence, intellectual vitality, and personal context. USC looks for students who will contribute to their diverse and vibrant campus life, students who are unafraid to speak up. So we usually include this slide to just really emphasize the fact that colleges are looking at you as the entire person and not just your test score and not just your GPA. So as you know, like if somebody is evaluating your SAT score, they have no idea, if you are somebody who is unafraid to speak up in class, which is something that USC looks for. Or, if you have a perfect 4.0 GPA, they have no idea if you like what your personal context is, what your backstory is, other than you're an awesome student. So they're looking at your entire profile and they are using that information to decide whether or not you are a strong fit for their school and whether or not you are going to add value to their campus life. So takeaway is admissions officers are looking for engaged and interesting humans who will contribute to their school. So not just students who are going to, take from the school. They want students who will give back to the school and add value to their campus in a positive way. They also want students who are going to graduate from their colleges and go on to be successful as alumni outside of the school, because ultimately that makes their school looks really good. So they're looking for students who are going to come to campus, contribute, graduate, give back to their campus after they graduate. And at the most competitive schools, they're looking for students who will change the world. So I think, they're looking for students who have ambitious goals that are not just lofty and unsupported. They're looking for students who have these goals, but have also started working towards these goals in high school. So they have evidence of, this work towards these goals on their common application when it is time for them to apply. So next, we'll talk a little bit about how applications are processed, so you can understand what actually happens in the admissions office once you apply. So we have this chart that kind of explains how everything works. So you or your child worked really hard on their college applications. So that means, months of brainstorming and editing and, like tons and tons of hours working on their college application. In reality, they've probably been working really hard for a lot longer than that. So they've been, maybe for all of high school, like working really hard on their extracurricular activities. They've been studying hard. They tried their best to get a strong SAT, ACT score, taking challenging courses in high school, trying to get leadership experience. In reality, maybe they've been working hard for a really long time. They put all of that hard work into their application. They finally get to the point where they press submit. So they press submit on their college application. Their application, which is like 13 to 15 pages of a PDF once it's all finalized, gets added to the stack of thousands of other applications. So let's just pick Stanford, for example. I think they get upwards of 40,000 applications per year. So your student's application is one of tens of thousands. Now that sort of digital stack of tens of thousands of applications is then sorted by region. So almost all of the schools separate applications by region. The main outlier is MIT, who reads applications by citizenship on the first read, but every other school separates applications by region. So that means that there is a regional admissions officer who's assigned to read all of the applications from a particular region. So I grew up in Los Angeles. That's a very big city with lots of applications. Maybe they have 2 readers that cover all of Los Angeles. What that means is the regional admissions officer assigned to read my application from Los Angeles is very familiar with my high school, all of the high schools nearby, all of the surrounding high schools. They're familiar with the context, they're familiar with the curriculum, they're familiar with the types of students who go to these schools, what resources they might have, and they're able to have that sort of localized context to help them make their decisions. It also means that that one person who's reading my application is also reading all of the other applications from my high school. So that is my direct competition. So when you're thinking about, what makes you different from other students, you really want to be thinking about your direct peers. So the people in your class, the people at high schools nearby. You're not competing against students from other countries or other parts of the United States. You're competing against the students from your own region on that first initial read. It's a very important concept to grasp. So, that one person who's reading your application, that person is a human, that person gets tired, that person gets bored. Like imagine reading hundreds of applications. You're just spending 10 to 15 minutes per application, and you're seeing a lot of similar stories, a lot of similar extracurriculars, a lot of similar essays. So that can be a pretty intense and I would say sometimes boring job. So when you think about it that way, like your job is to connect with that one person who's reading your application and to give them something that's different than everybody else, that really connects with that person and makes them interested in your story and convinces them that you deserve to get into their school. So if that one person likes your application and you are a good fit for their school, they will bring you to the admissions committee. In the admissions committee, all of the admissions officers across all of the different regions will get together and they will pitch their applicants to the committee. So they will say, I really want Josefa to get in because she is a future leader in the business world for reasons XYZ or something like that. So they are essentially marketing you to the admissions office, to the other admissions officers. So you want to be thinking about, okay, how do you want to package yourself in a way that is memorable and persuasive and unique? Like, what is a hook that you can put together that really ties together everything that you've done, so that when that person is advocating for you, you have something catchy and memorable about you. You don't just want to be the 4.0 student who is good at sports, who does charity, who is on Model UN, who does debate, who's part of the finance club. Like, I don't even remember what I just said. Like, that's not very memorable. You want to have something very pointed about you, so that, in that intense process when they're pitching hundreds of applications to get in, there's something about you that really stands out. So that's sort of an overview of how the admissions process works. I think it's helpful to kind of learn from that and understand the key priorities when you're putting together an application for success. So takeaways: if you don't make an impression on the first person to read your application, that person is not going to bring you to the committee, that person is not going to advocate for you, and you're not going to get in. Okay. Next, we will talk a little bit about the college application timeline overview. So what does the application timeline look like in junior year? So these are some recommendations for things that you can be doing now. So since we are in spring, almost in spring of junior year. So touring colleges, whether you are able to make I know with a couple of years of COVID, like, people sort of didn't travel as much. Now that things are open, it is a pretty good exercise to tour different colleges. So we usually recommend that students take 11th grade spring break to do this. It's a lot, you get a better picture of what the campus is actually like when school is in session. So it is valuable to visit in the summer too, but when the students aren't on campus, you don't really get the full picture of what the campus life experience is. So, planning a list of planning a campus visit tour is something that is worthwhile if you are able to. And then I think when you plan these visits, you want to be strategic about which colleges you go to. So instead of trying to go to every school that you're interested in, which is very hard to do, they may be in very different locations, you should go to different types of schools. So you should go to schools that are in big cities and maybe in more rural areas, or, a liberal arts college and a university, or maybe a big school and a small school, just to get just to see what these different types of schools are looking for, to see what you like and what you don't like. And you can sort of build off your list in that way. So if you like, let's say you really like USC because of its academic program and because of its, Greek life, maybe you consider also applying to Duke or Vanderbilt or something like that, which are also, really strong schools that also have strong Greek life. So just being able to mix up the types of schools that you visit is worthwhile. You also want to eventually take the SAT or the ACT, if you haven't already, in spring of your junior year, so that you have time to potentially retake it either in the spring of your junior year or the summer after your junior year. You don't want to have to be retaking your SAT or your ACT, in the fall of your senior year, when you're really busy with APs and putting together your college applications and your extracurriculars and all of that. Starting college research. So, just to build off of the school tours, like getting on the website, getting on the social media pages, going on YouTube, like talking to alumni of different, anybody who went to these schools, like asking them questions. It's a really good way to learn the ins and outs of the school, which you will need to really like finalize your school list, and also to put together school-specific essays when it does come time to work on those supplemental essays. And then, yeah, take your APs. So if your school offers AP curriculum, then obviously you want to take the tests in May. Meeting with your college counselor. A lot of schools will require this, or maybe they even invite the parents to meet with the college counselor. It's a good time to just get to know that person, understand what they think of you. We have a section on this later in the presentation, so I won't spend too much time here. But just understanding like the context of your high school, what your college counselor is like, how much that person will or will not be able to help you, and sort of what their expectations are of the process can be helpful to do. And then this is really key throughout 11th grade. Like if you're being strategic about the process, like you know that you're going to ask 2 11th grade teachers for letters of recommendation one day. So you want to be spending time building your relationship with those teachers so that they like you and so that they are invested in your future success. So I would say for students to stay after class, to ask their teachers questions, to like make sure that their study guides look good for an upcoming test, to really like maybe even have lunch with their teacher, just get to know them and actually spend that time. This is a valuable skill that will also be helpful in college when you're trying to build relationships with professors who may open doors for you with like their research or their colleagues or things like that. So definitely a helpful skill for students to learn in high school. And then going the extra mile for your extracurriculars. It's not enough to just focus on your classes and your grades or your college applications. You have to be doing all of that while also maintaining, your extracurricular involvement. So starting to draft. So now we're talking about summer before your senior year. So yeah, retaking your SAT, ACT score if needed. Just a note on that is like you shouldn't continue to just take your SAT. Like colleges will know how many times you've taken the exam. We typically say like we would prefer a student doesn't take it more than 2 times, but definitely not more than 3 times. Like it's sort of like a threshold matter. So once you reach a certain threshold, depending on the school, like it's really the rest of your application that's going to get you in. So the difference of 10 points is not going to make or break it, and you should really be spending your time doing something else. And then starting to draft your personal statement. So I like for students in the second semester of junior year to just like maybe create a sticky note in their phone with like any ideas that come to them about their life that are like interesting, or any potential topics for a personal statement. You might just be doing something and something comes to mind, and then when it's time to start actually writing your personal statement, like 3 months later, you don't remember what that was. So we will usually have our students get started on their actual personal statements, brainstorming, writing, editing in June. So helping students come up with ideas for those essays, running through a list of brainstorming exercises, writing sketches or outlines, depending on how the student works, refining the content, drafting, editing, etc. And then you can also make a Common App account. So it goes live in August. You can start, filling out the basic information. And I sort of think this is just a good way for students and families to feel like they have made progress and gotten something done. So, the actual applications take so much work, such a long process that, you could be working on your personal statement for 2 months and you don't quite feel done even, but just like going in and filling out the common application and filling out the pieces that are more like form-like, at least you feel like you've really accomplished something. And you get to see, all of the different questions that they ask you and just make sure that you're fully prepared for all the work that you have coming up. Okay, so the takeaway is college application process is long and time consuming. Yes, 100%. Starting to prepare early just to understand the expectations, understand the workload, understand everything you need to do by when you need to do it, will help set you up for success for that, fall of 12th grade, and make it so that you're not like working until midnight of the deadline, on October 31st before the November 1st deadlines. Just going to take a look at some of these questions here to see how I can incorporate them into the next section here. Just going to ask a quick question. Just going back to how applications are processed. So it's based on the location of your high school, not on your family's address. So your student lives in Los Angeles, but goes to boarding school on the East Coast, they will be evaluated, with the other students from their high school on the East Coast. We'll get to some of the other points as I go through these slides. Okay, so how can you best prepare for college during junior year? So we will go through all of these individually. I will not take time to run through them all right now. But first is to improve your organizational and time management skills. So as I referenced before, 11th grade is a very stressful time for students. Oftentimes they're taking their most rigorous coursework that they've ever taken, at their high school. Maybe they have a ton of APs, and that will continue on into 12th grade. And they're also trying to nail the SAT, ACT. They're also trying to really progress their work with their extracurricular activities. So maybe they're taking on leadership positions and they actually have responsibilities, or maybe they are prepping for competitions, or maybe they're doing taking classes outside of school. Maybe they have a job, whatever it is, students are really busy, and it's important in high school to develop the foundation for, having a disciplined, approach when trying to juggle all of these different things. So in terms of just organizational advice for students, I think learning to manage a calendar in high school is something that will set them up well for not just the application process, but also for college and eventually their jobs. So, having putting everything on the calendar, which includes, blocking out time for particular projects or work. So, I like to advise students to obviously put all of their obligations on their calendar, but to also block off time for when they are going to work on a particular project, whether it's homework, whether it's their personal statement, whether it's their activities list, whatever it is, you put it on the calendar. Obviously it takes some discipline to make sure that you actually spend when the time comes on the calendar, you actually follow through, but it at least sort of gets the student mentally ready to spend that time working on that task. Also just helps students kind of manage a busy, lots of different things floating around. And then Google Drive. So Google Drive or, some other equivalent, organizing things on spreadsheets and documents. So having a folder that is for your college application work, that is something that we do with students. We have our activities list folder, we have our personal statement drafts folder, we have our supplemental essays folder, we have spreadsheets to manage our students' progress, to talk about all of the progress they're making on all of the different components of the application, where they are, all of our meeting notes, things like that. So just making sure that you're fully documenting everything, help you get more organized. I think this also comes particularly in handy with supplemental essays. So when it comes time to write school-specific essays, why do you want to go to the school, or why do you want to be this major, or tell me more about a particular extracurricular activity, you'll find that a lot of schools have sort of overlapping prompts, and it is definitely not advisable to just repurpose essays, directly for another school. But you want to have all of your essays in one place with all of your prompts organized in one place. So we have a master, I think we call it the master supplemental essay tracker or something like that, to just see all of the essays in one place. There will probably be upwards of 20 essays depending on which schools you're applying to, so that you just have everything organized, all of the hard work that you've done, being able to sort of like pick content from different essays so that you can streamline your work better. Note-taking tools, some advice based on how you work and what sort of programming you use. Timers, maybe it sounds elementary, but like particularly when it comes to creative writing, sometimes it's helpful to just set a timer and write whatever comes to mind. So like for the personal statement, sometimes depending on how the student works and just depending on like what kind of ideas they have or they don't have, maybe they set a timer and say, I'm gonna set this for 10 minutes and I'm gonna write whatever comes to mind for 10 minutes. At the end of that 10 minutes, I'm gonna see what I put down on the paper. Maybe that information, that those ideas are not good, maybe they are, maybe we take some of the ideas and turn it into something else, but just helpful to like set a sort of dedicated time and to just put pen to paper when it comes to actually writing creatively, which maybe students aren't in the habit of, particularly at school. Maybe they're doing more academic writing. So like creative writing and reflective writing is a little bit different. And then I can't emphasize this one enough, focus mode. Yeah, I can't even like begin to understand what it would be like to be 17 these days, but with all of the sort of like how attached we all are to our phones and our computers and all of our devices, just putting focus mode on. So no notifications, like no TikTok, no Snapchat, no emails, whatever it is that distracts students, like putting the notifications away, putting your phone away. It will allow you to spend a lot less time on a task and to just focus and get it done rather than being distracted constantly and something taking 2 hours that should have taken 1 hour. So that is good advice for all of us, I think. Okay, next piece of advice is to start a master resume, which will then lead to your activities list. So the master resume is basically a long list of everything you've ever done. Maybe you can go all the way back to like, from the time you were little, but I would say mostly like from middle school on. So every extracurricular, every hobby, every internship, summer job, every class you've taken, like really any sport you've played, like everything you've done. This is not, doesn't matter what format you choose. It doesn't matter if it's like, 5 pages or 1 page, like everything you've done, put it all down. And when you're done, like ask your parents or parents ask your children to like tell your children if they're missing anything. I think a lot of times sometimes students think that something that they do is not necessarily relevant to the college application when, maybe it really is. So, if you are a student and like you are the one that at every social gathering is like playing the music at the social gathering, like maybe that tells us something about you that we want to dig into further, and potentially that will become part of your application persona and your like marketing hook on your application. So a lot of times students just think that this should be like more official, when in reality it should just be everything that you're interested in, everywhere you spend your time, really everything. Because a lot of times without even knowing it, like we're able to spot themes of your personality traits, of your interests, and we're able to sort of use that information to help students develop their application persona or their marketing hook for their application later on. And then obviously, when you apply to college, you will also, if you're using the Common App, which most likely you will, you'll get to tell colleges about 10 different extracurricular activities. And so, this exercise will help feed into your actual activities list, like the resume section of your application. So if you want to organize it in the same way as the Common App activity section, it would look like this. So what kind of activity, what was your position, what was your description, like what did you actually do and accomplish, which grades, blah, blah, blah. But I think the important part is not about how it's organized. It's about getting everything done, everything down that you've done, and then taking a step back, making sure everything's there, and like seeing themes and trying to think about and reflect on, you know, why you're motivated to, like what motivates you, what are you interested in, what do your activities say about your personality, and just sort of reflect and think about what makes you unique from other students so that you can kind of work that theme into your entire application. Okay, make a standardized test plan if you don't have one. So I touched on this a little bit before, so I won't spend too much time, but usually we recommend that students take practice tests in both the SAT and the ACT, see which one they are naturally better at, and then decide to take that test. There's no difference from an admissions standpoint in somebody taking the SAT or somebody taking the ACT. You just want to get the best score that you possibly can. So pick the one that, you know, fits best with your learning style and abilities. Once you take the practice test, then when you're prepping, like you also want to focus on the sections that you're not as strong at. Like if you're getting, you know, 750 on math right away, but only, you know, 650 on verbal, then you want to spend most of your studying effort on verbal. And then, yeah, I would say don't take it more than 3 times. Never take a real test that's like for practice. Like take practice tests. Don't not study and just go take the test to see what you get. That's not a good idea. And like I said, you really don't want to take it more than 3 times, really ever. And hopefully you can nail it in about 1 or 2. Okay, so we have some SAT dates coming up. To mark your calendars. I think you have to like sign up maybe around a month in advance, so you have time for all of these except for potentially this one. So mark your calendars, take your SAT, ACT if you can, and definitely study before you do. Okay, next, take some water quickly. So you want to plan a productive summer. So summers, colleges want to see how you spend your free time. So there are a couple of schools who have short answers that actually ask students. It'll say like, tell us about how you spent your last 3 summers or 2 summers. And it'll be just a short answer. So like, hopefully, you know, if you're applying to that school, you have something interesting to tell them about how you spent your time. So, you know, they don't want students who sit around and do nothing all summer. They want students who really make the most of their time off, who work to develop themselves, who work to make an impact on the people around them, who sort of explore their interests, who demonstrate, who really show that these people will come to campus and like take advantage of all of the resources that their campuses have. So they don't want students who are going to come to their college and then like sit in their room and go to class and like not really engage in any other way. So they really want students who are, you know, maximizing their time to develop as citizens of the world. So obviously, there are a lot of different ways that you can spend your summer. You can apply to actual summer programs. You can work on independent projects. You can get a job. You can do academic research. You can go to camp. There are a lot of different things that you can do. You can compete in whatever it is that, you know, you did. Like I think a long time ago, back when I was in high school in the summers, I was competing in basketball tournaments, and then also like doing a lot of coaching work for students in like under-resourced areas to give back that way. But whatever it is, like, you know, there are some pros and cons of going to formal summer programs. So the pros would be that, some of these programs are good ways to actually figure out if you're interested in something. So like if you take a class at a college over the summer, that is not going to help you get into that school, into that college when you do apply, but it is a good way to figure out if you're actually interested in that subject, and maybe helps you refine your major choice. You get to see what it's like to be in a college environment, meet some friends with similar interests, connect with professors if they're actually taught by actual professors. So we've had a couple of students, go to these summer programs and actually build connections with professors on their own. And then they end up, keeping a relationship and potentially helping with the professor's research after the class. Like that is only the most like ambitious and like confident students who are able to do that type of networking, but it has been done. Then the cons, so these summer programs like are not necessarily going to add that much to your candidacy for colleges. Some of them will. So there are some very competitive summer programs that colleges sort of admire when they're doing their reviews. So that would be like MIT's RSI or Penn's MNT or Iowa Writers Workshop. So there are selective summer programs that can add value to your candidacy, but just taking a class at a college is not going to add value to your candidacy in terms of like making you more competitive. And then the other cons would be like, this is usually like a month of your summer. So is that the best way to spend your time? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. They can be expensive. And yeah, opportunity costs, we want to be thinking about like, if you didn't go to the summer program, what else would you be doing? If you wouldn't be doing anything else, then definitely go to the program. But if you would, then maybe don't. Okay, junior year is a good time to apply to competitive summer programs. So I think I mentioned some of these on the previous slide, but YYGS is a popular one. Iowa Writers Workshop. Iowa has the best creative writing program in the country. Deadlines ranged from December all the way to actually March, not February. So there are a number of summer programs that still have deadlines available if you haven't yet applied. But we actually started working with students on their summer plans back in November, because like that's how quickly these deadlines sneak up on us. So yeah, time to think about how you can, strive for a bigger role in your favorite activities. Good time to start your own initiative if you have any ideas with your summer break. You also want to be taking your extracurriculars to the next level. So this is sort of like building off of the summer plan. So using summer and also the fall of your senior year, so that by the time you submit an early application, like most commonly the deadlines are around November 1st, you are really at the like peak of your extracurricular performance. So you are demonstrating leadership, you are demonstrating sustained involvement, you are making an impact on like the biggest scale that you possibly can. You've like increased the scope of your impact to be from like maybe just your class in 10th grade to your whole school in 11th grade to like your whole city in 12th grade. You leader of the organization, you are actually achieving things as the leader of the organization, whether it's you've like increased membership by 50% in your tenure, or you have invited 5 speakers to come speak to your student group, or you raised $5,000 so that your club could go on a big trip for a competition or something like that. You want to actually think about how you've quantified your involvement over the years and really be working for that maximum impact by the time you're applying in the fall of your senior year. So example of how we could potentially help a student who was interested in architecture, so real student. Short-term goals were to continue her own research and develop a stable foundation for knowledge of architecture, develop a reading habit, so read architecture daily 5 times a week and log it in a reading log. Take a master class over the summer, see if there are opportunities to connect with a local architecture firm to volunteer internet, confirm what courses are available in this high school in this area. Long-term goals, find a way to further my education by the way of online courses and learning opportunities, do a summer program in art and design. The final goal for somebody interested in architecture is potentially like crafting their own portfolio so that they have it to submit along with their common application when it comes time. So another way that you can sort of improve your profile is by doing academic research. So like I said, like colleges, especially at the highest level, are looking for students who demonstrate intellectual curiosity. So students who want to know so much about their particular field that the high school teaching environment is not enough, and they want to go beyond what's offered at their high school and they want to explore a subject at the college level. That sort of initiative and sort of curiosity is something that the most competitive schools look for. And maybe you can even get something that's tangible as a result. So maybe you do research with a professor and you write a research paper and it gets published. Or maybe you submit it for publication and it's pending publication by the time you apply. Or maybe you're a student that's interested in business and, as a result of like an academic mentorship or something, you put together a pitch deck to pitch your business. And then after that, you're able to raise the money from like your friends and family or something like that. Or maybe you put together like a film if you're a student that's interested in that, or a podcast. So lots of different ways to sort of develop your profile through research. I'll skip that because I gave a lot of examples already. Starting your own business. So for students who are interested at all in business or who are interested in entrepreneurship, or just who really like love communicating or bringing people together, or like marketing or selling or pitching, whatever it is, like if you are interested in starting your own business, then start one. I think there are there's a lot of value to doing this. It's not just about like the exercise of doing it, but it's about what that shows about you. So you cared about something so much that you were willing to do it yourself. You're willing to take risks. You learn a lot. It's not easy, like I know from personal experience, but you learn about like, how to create something from scratch, how to sell yourself or sell something to other people, how to communicate with other people. If you're able to bring, other students on, like how to manage and communicate with other people. So, very helpful for students who are like interested in business, but there are obviously other benefits as well if you're not interested in business. Okay, another way to spend your time over the summer would be like to work on an independent project through like a skill building activity. So that could be taking an online class or a master class or something like that, arranging a TEDx event for students, attending online writing workshops, hosting a lecture series with experts, launching your own magazine, making a documentary, things like that. Okay, so that was like about how to sort of improve your profile in the final months leading up to your application deadlines. So now we'll talk a little bit about choosing your recommenders. So in case you didn't know, when you apply to college, you will get 2 letters of recommendation from your teachers and 1 letter of recommendation from your college counselor. So typically, we advise students to get letters of recommendation from their 11th grade teachers. And typically, despite what the student is interested in, you want to be getting a letter from a like STEM subject and from a humanities subject. So maybe your science teacher and your English teacher, or your math teacher, and your history teacher. So you want to be picking core classes. You want to be picking one STEM, one humanities teacher. And then it's definitely best, if possible, to pick an 11th grade teacher because they can speak about you most recently and they can speak about you like at the sort of highest, most advanced level of your kind of academic work to date. So you will also get a letter of recommendation from your counselor, which is like a little bit more standard. They'll speak to your coursework, like how it compares to your peers, like the rigor of your coursework, your personality, things like that. You want to choose your recommenders strategically. So you want to pick people who are going to say nice things about you. Do not pick people who don't like you. Teachers are humans, and hopefully you have a good sense of like, who likes you, who doesn't. We also definitely advise students to take a proactive approach to the process. So I talked about this earlier, but like building the relationship early. If you know now, what is today? January 25th, that you are going to have to ask two of your teachers in April or May for a letter of recommendation. That means you have like February, March, April, like 3-4 months to start building a relationship with those teachers. So think about it now and take steps every week or every month to build that relationship. Day after class, ask the teacher questions, eat with the teacher, ask the teacher about their background, their personal lives, etc. Like start working on those networking skills. And then when it is time to make the ask, you want to be very thoughtful about how you do this. And we advise students to prepare like a letter of recommendation package for their teachers, which includes a cover letter, a resume, and an outline of specific personality traits and work examples that we want them to highlight. So sometimes students think this is like a little bit too aggressive and they're not willing, like they think that they shouldn't do that. But in reality, like teachers have so many letters of recommendation to write. They're actually really appreciative when a student takes the time to prepare and to like make their job easier. So maybe you want the teacher to highlight your like intellectual curiosity and give 2 examples of how you demonstrated that in their class. Or maybe your like strong communication skills and then give 2 examples of that. So yeah, like students don't really realize that they can do this, but the letters are really the only place on the application that anybody else gets to say anything about you. So you really want the letters to validate everything that you say about yourself, to add any color to things that are missing, to fill any gaps about your weaknesses or your, to emphasize your strengths. So they're super important. I know that different high schools have different methods, different resources. Like there is a huge scale. We work with students from all different types of high schools, from the most elite high schools in the country to like public schools that have, one counselor for 500 students. We work with students from the entire range. And I'll say that like, each school has a different system. Some schools will have like a survey that students will fill out for their teachers. So this is something that like, if we were working with a student, we would spend a lot of time like editing and like brainstorming of like how to fill out the survey. I know that some schools will have teachers fill out brag sheets, in April maybe of 11th grade. And so the school will ask the parents, especially for the counselor letter, to like speak about their student, which is not an easy thing to do because obviously, well, not obviously, but most parents, you're totally biased. And so it's hard to sort of pick and choose what is appropriate for this type of document, but that's definitely something that we help with too. So just to wrap, I think I have a little bit more advice. Okay, yeah. So here's like an example of a sort of cover letter that we help a student put together for their letter of recommendation. But so I talked about like who to ask, how to prepare for that ask, like how to like, navigate that situation, but didn't really talk about like what makes a great letter. So your teacher's background. So I would say like this is not something you can control, obviously, but like if your teacher has been, teaching at the high school for a really long time, then that person has like seen a lot of different students and maybe is a little bit more senior, or maybe they can just compare you to more students. And that sort of comparative praise is important. So, you want somebody to speak to, not just to speak about you in a bubble, but to speak to how you compare to other students. So something like, I've been teaching at this school for 10 years, and this student is more accomplished in math than any student I've previously taught. So like that sort of comparative praise is really helpful in a letter. And then superlative praise is also really helpful. So this is like an example would be, this is the brightest student I've taught in 10 years because of XYZ. Have to have examples for some sort of praise like that. And then I skipped over intimate, but intimate, just the better the teacher knows you, the better your letter will be. So maybe if your 11th grade teacher was also your soccer coach, that person knows you inside of school and also on the soccer field, and they can speak to your like grit and determination and work ethic and things like that. Or maybe, one of your teachers is also your debate coach. So just the better somebody knows you, the more genuine and intimate the letter will be, and it'll make a greater impact. Okay, ask your counselor the right questions. So high school counselors, you're gonna have the whole spectrum depending on like what type of high school you go to, but at very competitive schools with a lot of resources, your college counselors are important. You want them to be on your side. You want to understand what they think about you, what they think of other people at your school, because they will sort of try to funnel students to different, colleges. So you want to just like understand kind of like what their gut reaction on you is. And you want to be strategic about, navigating that relationship as well. I think it is important for you to understand like how your coursework compares to your peers. You will get a grade in your application process from your counselor about this. So if you are trying to get into like Yale or something, and you think you are taking the most rigorous classes, but you're actually not, and your counselor is going to grade that you're not, then like that's something that you really need to know to sort of strategize your candidacy. You can ask them about which classes would be a good fit. If you want to be an engineering major, like they're going to tell you to take the most advanced physics classes and math classes. You want to understand if your coursework is competitive enough. You want to understand the sort of historical context and admissions results from your high school. Like maybe you have Naviance and you can check yourself. I would say that like, schools definitely, it changes year to year. It's not like consistent. It's not like, so I went to Harvard Westlake for high school. That's like the #2 high school in the country. I think I was one of 16 students my year to go to Yale, but the next year only like 4 students got into Yale or something like that. So it's not like every year, like UCLA takes 10 students from my high school. It doesn't work like that. And then obviously you want to ask them about like what types of colleges might be a good fit for you based on your interests, based on your major interests, your like location preferences, things like that. If they have any resources for you, like recent alums who would be willing to talk to you, that's a good way to learn about the school too. Choosing the right major. So I think this stresses families and students out a lot. At most schools, like in the top 50 or top 100 even, you will not select your major right away. So you will put an intended academic interest on your common application. So like the common application and most school supplements will have you list potentially 3 academic interests. So like what's your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. They're not majors. You are not committed to that major once you get to campus. At Yale, I picked political science like halfway through my second year, through my sophomore year. So it's just a good way to sort of indicate what you hope to study. It's another place to be like strategic. You want to make sure that your intended academic interests align with how you spent your time in high school and how you're positioning yourself in your application. But yeah, it is important to know that, like, you know, I think colleges understand that, the students applying to college are 17, 18 maybe, and your interests will change over time. That is totally normal. You are not committed to what you put in your common application. So things you want to be thinking about are like, what are your favorite classes? If you really don't like math, then like you probably don't want to be an econ major. What do you want to do for a living? Obviously, it's very hard to know that in high school, but I would recommend, like, talking to your parents' friends who work in different fields, asking them what their days are like, how they got to where they got, if they enjoy their jobs, things like that. It's a good way to sort of explore and understand what you like and don't like. Looking at your extracurriculars. So if you really like the sort of research aspect of debate, then maybe you look for a major that is like research heavy. And then maybe you don't even know like what majors are available, or maybe there's interdisciplinary majors that you didn't know about that would be interesting to you. So you definitely want to look, if you have a dream school, like go on their website, look at all the majors that they have to offer, pick the ones that align with your interests and your sort of application persona, and navigate the process that way. Campus visits, I talked about this a fair amount earlier, so I think I will just skip over this, but yes, spring break of junior year is the best time to do this. When you're actually on campus, definitely sign up for the tours, info sessions, go to a class if you can, meet a professor, talk to students, have a list of questions, like check out the actual living situation, the sort of social areas on campus, the cities, if there are any restaurants that are super popular. I think in addition to understanding, to learning about the school, to seeing if it's a good fit for you, it's also a great opportunity to find details that you can later reference for your school specific supplemental essays. So like if you apply to Yale, you have to write a short answer that's like, why Yale? And if you went to New Haven and like you had lunch at Pepe's and you had like the most amazing pizza, like maybe that works its way into your why Yale essay or something like that. So just being able, or like you went to you took a class with a professor and you like learned something and you can reference that professor or the class in your supplemental essay. It's a good place, these visits, or online or in person, like a good way to just pick up some details for your application later. Just an example of sort of how we've helped students set up campus visits. Okay, narrowing down your list. So I would say, the list is an evolving, usually spreadsheet, but you may have 25 schools that you're interested in, and your job is to eventually narrow it down to like 10 to 12, probably, depending on your situation. I would say we're seeing students apply to more schools these days as it's gotten more competitive, as the Common App has made it easier for students to apply to more schools. But you want to be sort of working your way towards refining your list and, making sure that you have a good, like a balanced list of, maybe 30% reach, 40% fit, 30% safety, or something like that. So yeah, the things you want to be thinking about, maybe you visited and you like really disliked how far the college was from an airport, and you refine your list that way. Like, it sounds silly, but students have actually done that. Maybe you went to a school and it was so small you could not imagine being in such a small environment. And so like from there, okay, I'm not applying to any small schools, only big schools. So you want to be just sort of picking up what you like, what you don't like about schools, geography, social life, academic experiences, just the culture, the types of people, what kind of city it is. And you can sort of build your list from there. So like schools all share common characteristics. And so you want to understand really what you like so that you can build a list reach fit safety schools based on your specific preferences. So in addition to like websites, catalogs, rankings, guidebooks, I would also say like schools put more effort into their social media. So like get on their Instagram, see what the school is saying about itself, see what professors they're highlighting, see pictures of the campus, YouTube as well, super helpful. So I think that was our 10th point. So junior year, essential part of your application journey. There are a lot of things that you should be doing now to continue developing your profile and your interests. You know, it's not set in stone yet. You still have like 10 months until early decision deadlines. That's a lot of time to sort of change, to make progress and develop your background and your profile. And then at the same time, you want to start actually be preparing for your, like, working on your college applications. So starting to think about your school list and refining it that way, preparing your letters of recommendation, like later towards the summer, like brainstorming and editing your personal statement, activities lists, all of that type of good stuff. Tonight, this week is our juniors week. So we had a webinar last night. I had the privilege of listening to me tonight. And tomorrow night, we have my colleague DJ, who was a former admissions officer from MIT, talking about how to increase your college admissions chances to your dream schools. So that presentation will talk a little bit more about, the actual application components. We have a special now, so for our high school juniors, so signing up before February 1st, so I think that is next Wednesday, a week from today, to receive 10% off and a free SAT, ACT strategy course. Just looking at our 2023 results so far, so like I said, and we had 9 into MIT, 2 into Harvard, 1 into Stanford, 5 into Yale, 3 U Chicago. Let's see, we had 13 into Ohio State and 10 into NYU. So yeah, lots of exciting results so far. And obviously we will have a lot more come out in March or April when regular decision comes out. To talk a little bit about our programs. So Candidacy Building is our program for younger students. So working with them early on to sort of enhance their profile and plan ahead, helping them with their extracurriculars, summer planning, course selection, standardized test planning, all of that type of stuff. Application counseling is when we're actually helping students with the application. So, helping them pick their school list, helping them brainstorm and edit their personal statements, supplemental essays, activities list, letters of recommendation, interview prep if they get interviews, things like that. So that is a little bit about how we work with students. I will go ahead and answer some questions now. And then if you have any other questions or I didn't quite get to your questions tonight, feel free to shoot me an email. And I think I have one more poll here. But I will go ahead and answer some of the questions now. Thank you all so much for listening and staying on to hear me talk. So somebody asked if students should always have one letter of recommendation from a humanities and one from a math or science subject. Is it okay to have both from math and science? And then they also asked if it had to be junior year teachers. I think there's always exceptions, and we find there are always a lot of tricky situations, like maybe your teacher left in the middle of the year and you had a substitute, or like whatever it is. There are a lot, or maybe you didn't do well in a particular class. I think if we have it in an ideal world, you are asking one humanities teacher and one STEM teacher regardless of your interests. So even if you say, I want to be an engineer major and you want a letter of recommendation for math and science, like the best advice is to have one from the humanities so they can speak to your like other side of your brain, and one from the math or science. We have asked many of our former admissions officers about that, and they have all confirmed that this is the preference from the admissions office perspective, is to hear how teachers in different types of subjects, speak about you. So that is usually our advice. I would say that there are sometimes situations, so like maybe you do really poorly in your English and history classes, or one of those teachers like left, and so like you really have no choice but to ask math and science. Like we would navigate that situation if it came to that. But yeah, I would say, if in an ideal world you're asking one from, one STEM, one humanities, and then same with 11th grade teachers. In an ideal world, you're asking your 11th grade teachers. Sometimes people switch schools, that's not possible. Sometimes your teacher leaves in the middle of the year, it's not possible. So there are obviously like different situations, but definitely best to ask your junior year teacher. Like it's very common for students or families to say like, oh, but my 10th grade math teacher was also my soccer coach. Is that better than an 11th grade teacher? And most of the time, admissions officers confirm 11th grade is better, more recent, more advanced coursework. So I have a question about applicants competing with candidates at the same region or with all candidates in the states. So you are competing against the students from your own region on that first initial read, and then they bring everybody together, and obviously they only have a select number of spots, so then you're competing against everybody else there. So on that first read, you want to stand out from your direct competition, people at your high school, people from your area, and then on that second read, you want to be standing out from everybody else as well, and you want to be the best at whatever it is you do, because they can't admit somebody who's exactly like you from a different state or a different country either. So definitely both. More important, number of APs or GPA. I will say it depends on your goals. So you want to be taking the most rigorous courses available at your school while maintaining a strong GPA. You don't want to sacrifice either. So I would say like for most students, they can't just take the hardest classes available and do well. So you want to be taking the more challenging courses that align with your interests. So if you're interested in being an econ major, then you want to take the most advanced math classes that you can, and maybe you go a little bit easier on science classes in high school. But it depends on like what your goals are, obviously, and you can sort of make choices that will set you up for the best success of sort of achieving your goals. Somebody asked if it's worthwhile to retake the SAT if somebody scores a 1560. I would say no, like it's not worth it. Once you are, depending on which school you want to go to, obviously, but for any school, once you've reached that 1550 threshold, like it's not a good use of time to retake it. It's a box that they check. Okay, the student is really smart and will do well in our classes. What else does he have for me? Do some more of these questions. Question about students applying to all of their desired ED/EA schools and RD colleges by November. I would say, not all students are prepared to make an early decision application. Like maybe there's not one school that they're 100% committed to going to if they get in. So maybe they're not ready. But if you have a school that you're really interested in, then we definitely recommend that you apply early decision. If there are a couple that you can, also that you're also interested in and you want to apply early, that's fine. But most of the time, I would say our students will apply to between like 1 and 3 early schools, and then the rest will be in the regular decision round. The UCs are also another like step in the deadline. So it's always like some schools have actually October 15th deadlines, and then there's November 1st is a big one. November 30th is the UCs, and then the regular decision is like usually the first week of January. Some schools have like February 1st too. Somebody asked about how colleges view like camp, I think counselor in training programs versus a job versus internships versus pre-college programs, or asking if it depends on the major. I would say it definitely depends on the major and the student. Like if the student is, really actually interested in being a camp counselor and being a leader in that way, and they are positioning themselves as somebody who like really likes leading other people or cares about younger students and wants to be in education or wants to be in counseling work or whatever it is, like if that aligns with your profile, then that is the best use of your time. And then, for students who are more interested in business, then, you want to be getting an, or law, like potentially having an internship or a job would be a better fit than being a camp counselor. I would say it depends on your goals and your persona, and then you would make the decision that aligns best with those goals and that persona. That answers the question. Somebody asked about the IB program, if it's weighted the same as AP classes. That is another place where the regional admissions officer model comes into play. So the regional admissions officer will be very familiar with the region. If it's a region where most schools are IB curriculum, then they'll be very familiar with IB curriculum. I would say, like, from my view and like all of my colleagues' views, like IB is just as competitive, if not more competitive, than AP curriculum. So admissions officers understand that context. They are going to be very familiar with the curriculum with your particular high school. They will evaluate you accordingly, and they will also understand how to sort of compare you in an IB program to a student at an AP program. I'm going to answer one more question here. Somebody asked about having a letter of recommendation from somebody other than a teacher. That's a good question. I didn't mention that tonight. So you will be required to get 2 teacher letters of recommendation, 1 counselor letter of recommendation. Sometimes it makes sense for students to get another letter of recommendation. So from somebody who they worked really closely with. So a lot of times, like if you are a really strong athlete, for example, then it makes sense for one of your coaches to write you a letter of recommendation. If you like are a debater and your debate coach, has worked with you for 3 years, like it makes sense to get a letter of recommendation from that person. So if I think the thing you want to think about is like admissions officers have very limited time. They actually don't want to be reading extra material that students submit. So they don't want students submitting extra material. That would be their preference. But if somebody is submitting something that really adds a different like angle to your candidacy, or like speaks to something that is not covered elsewhere and will actually like add value to your candidacy, then like that is something that we would advise the student to do. So that is all I have time for today. Thank you everybody for staying on with me. If I didn't get to your question, feel free to shoot me an email, or if you want to sign up for a consultation, feel free to shoot me an email as well. So in a consultation, I will ask questions about your students' background, goals, where they go to school, classes, like where they want to go to school, majors, all of that type of stuff. Give you some advice and feedback based on your answers, and then explain how we work with students and answer any questions you have. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Really great to talk with you. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening or day, wherever you are. And thanks again. Bye-bye.